Welcome to Government House on this beautiful morning. Not every morning's like this, but I think this demonstrates that this is going to be a very happy day indeed. I hope that you will enjoy the ceremony and our hospitality, and I know that it will be a memorable day for all of you. Ladies and gentlemen, I have it on command of the Queen to hold an investiture on Her Majesty's behalf and to confer the honour of Distinguished Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit on Dr. Alan Frampton of Auckland. I have it on command also to present the other recipients here assembled the insignia, decorations and medals to which they are entitled. All of you have, in various ways, rendered distinguished service to New Zealand, to the Commonwealth, and to the Queen. Ladies and gentlemen, as each recipient is honoured, may I invite you to join me in thanking them for their services and in congratulating them on their well-merited awards. I will now ask the Official Secretary, Mr. Tia Barrett, and the Director of the Honours Secretariat, Mr. David Bagley, to summon those whom Her Majesty has chosen to honour.
Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a Distinguished Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Dr. Alan Frampton of Auckland, for services to agriculture. Dr. Frampton was appointed to the New Zealand Dairy Board in 1973 and has remained involved in the industry ever since. He was 6 times the mission leader for the Dairy Board on trade visits abroad and a member of the Board of International Subsidiaries and Joint Ventures in Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, the Philippines and Singapore. He was Professor of Agricultural Economics and Farm Management at Massey University from 1968 to 1977, and Dean of the Faculty of Agriculture and Horticultural Sciences from 1977 to 1983. He has served in numerous committees in the agricultural sector and was the first chair of the Board of Ag Research. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a Companion of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Mrs. Gwen Bull of Papakura, for services to local government. Mrs. Bull has been active in a variety of community, regional and local government organisations in the Greater Auckland area for many years. She has represented Manukau City on the Auckland Regional Council and was elected chairperson of that body. She has played a leading role in the development of the Auckland Regional Growth Strategy and Regional Land Transport Strategy, and has been the chair of the Strategic Policy Committee. She is a trustee of the Friends of the Botanic Gardens and patron of the Auckland Engineering Lifelines Group. Professor Wystan CURNOW of Auckland for services to art and literature. Professor CURNOW has made a long and significant contribution to the development of New Zealand art and culture. As an art theorist, curator, writer, poet and academic for 34 years, he has taken a leadership role in expanding the public perception of art. He has been a curator of New Zealand artworks for 8 international exhibitions, 11 national or North Island touring exhibitions, and 6 Auckland exhibitions. Professor CURNOW has been responsible for some 242 publications, including several volumes of poetry, monographs on Stephen Bambury and Max Gimblett, and a major monographic study on Colin McCann.
Your Excellency, to receive the New Zealand Bravery Star, Mr. Peter DEANE of Waimate. On the morning of 9th of April 2000, 2 brothers, aged 13 and 14 years, were fishing in the Waihau River around an area known as the Box, so called because of its wooden boxed internal waterway channel. While walking alongside this channel, they began sinking into the stones but managed to pull themselves free. The younger boy lost a gumboot during the incident, so the older boy went back to retrieve it and became trapped. The younger boy ran for help and found Mr. DEANE in the nearby car park. By the time Mr. DEANE reached the box, the older boy was buried up to his chest in the stones. Mr. DEANE tried unsuccessfully to pull him out using his jacket. He then instructed the younger boy to hold on to the end of the jacket while he ran to get a rope from his car, which he looped under the sinking boy's arms and shoulders. Despite his efforts and those of another man, the boy continued to sink, and before long only his hands were visible. Another man arrived to help, and Mr. DEANE decided to enter the box channel from the opposite end and try to push or pull the boy from underneath. He removed most of his clothing and entered the dark, confined and extremely dangerous channel, pushing against the strong current of water and moving shingle. He was able to locate the boy by knocking and calling out to the third man on the surface. He then tried to push the boy from below, but was unsuccessful. After some time, a member of the fire service arrived to assist, wearing a wetsuit. Mr. DEANE was taken away for medical attention shortly afterwards, suffering from the extreme cold. Heavy equipment was later called in to remove the boy, who by that time had drowned. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a Companion of the Queen's Service Order for Community Service, Mr. Bill PENNO of Waimate. Mr. PENNO has made a significant contribution to local body affairs and to the community in South Canterbury for over 30 years. He was a member of the South Canterbury Catchment Board for 18 years, serving 6 years as chairman. For Environment Canterbury, he has been Chairman of Operations and Rural Services, Chairman of Resource Services and Chairman of the Regulatory Committee. Mr. PENNO is a former Chairman of the Waimate section of Federated Farmers and the Road Safety South Canterbury Trust. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a Companion of the Queen's Service Order for Public Services, Mr. Gordon Blake of Tirau. Mr. Blake was Mayor of South Waikato District Council for 15 years until his retirement in 2004. He was also a Matamati County Councillor as well as a Director of Dairy Meats New Zealand Limited. He was Chairman of South Waikato and South Auckland Calf Pools and a Trustee of Rangiora Trust Board and the Matamata Piako South Waikato Life Education Trust. Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of an Officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Mr. Billy Apple of Auckland, for services to art. Mr. Apple has proved to be a challenging and controversial artist for many people. He exhibited and gave public lectures and slide talks regularly in New Zealand in the 1970s and followed his work with a major exhibition, From Barry Bates to Billy Apple, in 1974 at the Serpentine Gallery in London. He has held exhibitions at all the major public New Zealand galleries and his work is held in several public collections. He continues to exhibit both with public art galleries and also in more alternative venues. Mr. Apple is one of the few New Zealand artists to have consistently worked in a conceptual manner and to have continued to produce work that presents new ideas concerning the function and process of art to New Zealand audiences. Miss Margaret NIELSEN of Wellington, for services to music. Miss NIELSEN was on the staff of the music department of Victoria University of Wellington for 33 years and established a reputation as a dedicated and energetic teacher. She was also a highly accomplished soloist and accompanist, specialising in the piano music of contemporary New Zealand composers. She has given premiere performances of many works and has been a member of the Music Advisory Committee of the Lilburn Trust since its establishment in 1984. Since her retirement, she has given personal and financial support to Victoria University School of Music and instituted the Margaret NIELSEN Music Scholarship. She played an important role as a member of the Establishment Committee for the New Zealand String Quartet. Mr. John PSATHAS of Wellington, for services to music. Mr. PSATHAS has recently achieved world recognition as the invited composer and arranger of music for the opening ceremonies of the 2004 Athens Olympics. Among his other achievements are the 2002 performance in Bologna of his saxophone concerto, his percussion concerto in Austria in 2001, and the premiere of View from Olympus during the Manchester Commonwealth Games, performed by Evelyn Glennie and Philip Smith with the Halle Orchestra. His works were performed at the 2000-2002 New Zealand International Festival of the Arts, and he has received commissions from the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra. Mr. Tom RYDER of New Plymouth for services to education and the community. Mr. RYDER was principal of New Plymouth Boys High School for 17 years until 1995 and is currently writing a book to mark the school's 125th anniversary. He was appointed President of the Secondary Principals Association of New Zealand in 1993. He is Registrar of the Taranaki Justices of the Peace Association and donates much of his time to the training of JPs in judicial and ministerial matters. Mr. RYDER is Chairman of the Board of Management of Knox Church and has been involved in many voluntary community projects, including the commissioning of New Plymouth's Puki Aliki Museum. Mr. Martyn Sanderson of Otaki for services to literature and the theatre. In 1964, Mr. Sanderson was one of the founders of Downstage Theatre, now the longest running professional theatre in New Zealand. He has been involved with film, television, radio and theatre as an actor, writer, director and producer. In the 1970s, he was involved with Bruno Lawrence's band Blurter. Among the many films he has been involved with are Wild Man, Sleeping Dogs, Ned Kelly, Beyond a Reasonable Doubt, Utu, An Angel at My Table, and Lord of the Rings. As a writer, he has published poetry, theatre and book reviews, and has taught student actors and directed student productions. Mr. Sanderson was appointed as a writer-in-residence at Massey University in 1999. Mr. Don Tricker for services to softball. Mr. Tricker was the coach of the New Zealand men's softball teams, the Black Sox, which, under his guidance, has won every international series it has played, including World Championship titles in 2000 and 2004. He was also a member of the team that finished as runners-up in the 1988 World Championships. In 2000, he won the Holberg Award for New Zealand Coach of the Year and is currently Senior Advisor for High Performance Coaching with Sport and Recreation New Zealand.
Your Excellency, to receive the insignia of a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit, Mrs. Pamela Allen of Auckland for services to children's literature. Mrs. Allen is a children's book author and illustrator who has published over 20 picture books. She has won the Australian CBC Picture Book of the Year Award, the New Zealand Library Association Russell Clark Award for illustrations, the Galen Gordon Award, and the Margaret Mayhew Medal in 2004. She has been a finalist for numerous Australian and New Zealand awards, and her books have been published around the world, including translations into French, Swedish, and Japanese. Mr. Richard Cathy of Wellington for services to the arts. Mr. Cathy was a board member of the Downstage Theatre from 1973 to 1984 and was its chairman from 1977. Since 1973, he has been a trustee and is currently chairman of the Meridian Energy Catherine Mansfield Monton Fellowship. He created Creative New Zealand's Working Party on Patronage in the Arts and is a former member of the Queen Elizabeth II Arts Council and the board of Creative New Zealand. He has been chairman of New Zealand Players Theatre Trust Board and of the Arts Foundation of New Zealand since 1999. Mrs. Avril Enslow of Christchurch for services to gymnastics. Mrs. Enslow has been involved in gymnastics for over 40 years and gained national honours before extending her activities into coaching, judging and administration. She served for 20 years on the New Zealand Gymnastics Women's Technical Committee, the latter years as the National Judging Coordinator. She has judged locally, nationally and internationally, including 3 Olympic Games, 8 World Championships and 4 Commonwealth Games. In 2001, she was awarded an honorary diploma from the Fédération Internationale Gymnastique for her services to international judging. Warrant Officer Communications Analyst Denise Jones, Royal New Zealand Navy of Porirua City. Warrant Officer Jones was deployed to Bagram, Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom in 2004. She was employed in the Cryptologic Support Group as an intelligence specialist to support the operations of troops in direct contact with belligerent forces. She frequently worked long hours to ensure that detailed assessments were available, thereby ensuring every possible measure had been taken to keep troops out of danger. On several occasions, information she provided to those in the field prevented them from direct engagement by belligerents and the potential loss of life. Mrs. Lois Lorne of Dunedin for services to speech therapy and the community. Mrs. Lorne has worked as a speech therapist for over 50 years and was president of the New Zealand Speech Language Association from 1980 to 1984. She has been involved with the Fortune Theatre in Dunedin for over 20 years and was president of the Otago Arts Council for 3 years. She has been actively involved in many aspects of church life as a member of the vestry of St Paul's Cathedral. Mrs. Lorne served several years with the National Council of Women and was District and Division Commissioner for Guides Otago for 10 years. Mrs. Helen Mason of Papakura for services to pottery. Mrs. Mason is regarded as a leader of craft pottery in New Zealand, having started in 1952. She was the founding editor of the New Zealand Potter, a publication which provided the first national link between craftspeople throughout the country. With Terry Barrow and Doreen Bloomhart, she was one of the organisers of the first national exhibition of pottery in Wellington in 1959. Annual exhibitions in Wellington, Napier, Auckland and Christchurch followed. For some years, she taught at Tokomaru Bay, where she became involved with the local Māori community and started the careers of several acclaimed Māori clay artists. Mr. Rion Murtha of Christchurch for services to broadcasting. Mr. Murtha has been a nationally recognised full-time race broadcaster and commentator in Canterbury for over 30 years and gave his first race broadcast in Reefton in 1960. He has described both galloping and trotting meetings for Radio Pacific, On Course and Trackside TV. He covers approximately 112 meetings each racing season. Mr. Morris Pullman of Hamilton for services to speedway racing. Mr. Pullman has been involved with speedway racing for 40 years. After suffering a serious accident, he became a senior administrator, referee and stipendiary steward in the sport. He is senior stipendiary steward and an official for the world body of motorcycle sport. He has instigated training seminars to ensure a high standard of safety for competitors and spectators, developed youth classes, and worked with the police, occupational safety and health, and local bodies on safety issues. Mr. Neil Reid of CURNOW for services to life-saving. Mr. Reid has been involved with surf life-saving since the 1960s. Since 1975, he has been involved with the Auckland Surf Life-Saving Association as District Superintendent, Competition Controller, Secretary of the Board of Management and Chairman. He was a Foundation Trustee of the Auckland Marine Rescue Centre Trust and has also been President of Surf Life Saving New Zealand. He is currently Chairman of the Surf Lifeguards New Zealand Foundation. In 1998, he was Competition Director for the World Life Saving Championships. Staff Sergeant Darren Waitere, the Corps of Royal New Zealand Engineers of Linton. Staff Sergeant Waitere was deployed to Iraq in 2004 as part of Task Group Break. He demonstrated outstanding leadership, professionalism, initiative, diligence and commitment throughout the deployment. He was solely responsible for planning and coordinating the repair and maintenance of 2 fragile floating pontoon bridges on the Shatarab River, which were strategically important crossings and communication links within Basra City. He established a management system for the bridges that accurately tracked repair and maintenance tasks and developed operational procedures that were subsequently adopted by his British counterparts. Corporal James Whitworth, the Corps of Royal New Zealand Engineers of Pukekohe. Corporal Whitworth served with Task Group Break in Iraq in 2004. During the deployment, he demonstrated outstanding leadership and personnel management, as well as an exceptional command presence. He served as an excellent ambassador for the New Zealand Defence Force, establishing an effective rapport with both his British counterparts and the local Iraqi people. He demonstrated the ability to accomplish tasks over and above that normally given to a junior non-commissioned officer, and was often in command of more troops than was normal for someone of his rank. Lieutenant Commander Carl Woodhead, Royal New Zealand Navy of North Shore City. Lieutenant Commander Woodhead served with the New Zealand Provincial Reconstruction Team in Bamiyan, Afghanistan, where he held the dual roles of engineer officer and project manager for the New Zealand Agency for International Development. He was responsible for all construction and maintenance tasks required at Kiwi Base and led a team of 22 New Zealand and Afghani personnel on a project to expand the base and provide ongoing maintenance services. As the Development Agency project manager, he prepared and implemented some 20 aid projects. He helped set up a provincial reconstruction team development group in Bamiyan, which brought together key representatives from New Zealand, United States, and the United Kingdom. His contributions enabled the team to build key relationships that proved critical to the ongoing success of the mission.
Your Excellency, to receive the New Zealand Bravery Medal, Mr. Bill Gilchrist of Wystan, Oamaru. On the 27th of October 2002, Mr. Gilchrist, aged almost 70 at the time, rescued a man from the surf off the Alafata River. The man had been swept into the river while whitebaiting. Despite trying to swim to safety, he was carried out by the strong current into the surf on the river bar. The river was running higher than usual because of the heavy rain the previous night, and the sea was significantly rougher than normal. The man's family noticed what had happened and tried to persuade other whitebaiters with boats to go to his rescue. All but one, Mr. Gilchrist, declined because of the dangerous conditions. The man had managed to stay afloat on his back in the cold water for approximately 15 minutes before Mr. Gilchrist reached him in his small aluminium dinghy. Mr. Gilchrist called out for the man to hold on to a handle on the back of the boat as conditions were too rough to attempt to bring him on board. At this stage, a wave broke over the top of the dinghy, which was nearly swamped. Despite the conditions, Mr. Gilchrist managed to tow the man up the river for a few hundred metres to the safety of the riverbank. Your Excellency, to receive the Queen's Service Medal for Community Service, Mr. Phil Denton of Invercargill. Mr. Denton has had a 25-year career in local radio broadcasting and spent 5 years as a volunteer for Access Radio. He has enthusiastically supported many community events and organisations and has given freely of his own time. His voluntary work for Radio Southland includes a radio request program, Old Folks at Home. He visits local rest homes and provides counselling for people, especially those with disabilities. He has enthusiastically supported Te Whenua, the Invercargill Environment Centre. Mrs. Anne Dick and Mr. James Dick of Dunedin. Mr. and Mrs. Dick have been approved foster parents since 1979. As well as bringing up their own 5 daughters, they have fostered over 50 children on a short or long-term basis. They also provide daycare for children with mental illness, intellectual problems, behavioural difficulties, or those with dysfunctional parents. Mrs. Dick has spent many hours working with mothers teaching them parenting skills and is a source of advice to trainee foster parents. They have encouraged continued involvement of the children with their own families, often having siblings to stay. When providing foster care for babies available for adoption, they give support to both the birth and adoptive parents. Mrs. Bethia Frost of Northland. Mrs. Frost has been involved on a voluntary basis for 50 years with Girl Guides and Rangers as both a leader and coordinator. She is also an active participant in a number of local organisations such as the Opportunity Shop and the Bowling Club, and has researched and written a book on leave for the school centenary. Mrs. Ina Gerbich of Wellington. Mrs. Gerbich has been a Samaritan for over 24 years and has been a director of the organisation for 15 years. In 1989, she started the Samaritan School Project, talking to thousands of students and establishing a program to help suicidal teenagers. She carries out many speaking engagements for the outreach program, including women's groups, church meetings and service clubs. Mrs. Gloria Hunt of Stoke. Mrs. Hunt was appointed President of the Nelson Multiple Sclerosis Society in 1981 and continued in that post until 2002. During her time as President, she represented the Nelson branch on the Multiple Sclerosis Society of New Zealand and raised $1 million for the society. She served on the Multiple Sclerosis Society of New Zealand from 1982 to 2002 and was for many years convener of the Public Relations Committee. Mrs. Hunt was an inaugural member of the Nelson Division of the New Zealand Paraplegic Federation and has served on local Plunket and kindergarten committees. Mrs. Beverly Kay of Te Awamutu. Mrs. Kay has been active in the Te Awamutu community for much of her life. She has been involved with the local Plunket Society for 50 years, during which time she held the position of President and is now patroness of the Te Awamutu and Waipa branches. She is active in the Red Cross Society and is the convener of the Meals on Wheels program. As an accomplished pianist, she plays in rest homes and hospitals regularly, as well as at community functions and the Kikikihi Presbyterian Church. She has been a supporter of Te Awamutu rugby for over 50 years. Mrs. Joan Shirley of Waimate Beach. Mrs. Shirley has been involved in her community in a voluntary capacity for over 40 years. She has been on the committees of Plunket, Kindergarten Parents Association, several primary schools and the Kapiti College Parents Association. She has been active in many community organisations, including the Kapiti Arts and Crafts Society, Kapiti Playhouse, Kapiti Coast Community Arts Council, Foundation for the Blind and the Save the Children Committee. She has been a marriage and a funeral celebrant for many years. Mrs. Adrienne Spark of Rangiora. Mrs. Spark has been involved in the North Canterbury community for over 40 years. She has been a member of the North Canterbury Sports and Recreation Trust, the Rangiora Golf Club and the Rangiora Pony Club. She was chair of the local business association and chair of the Rangiora 150-year Centennial Ball Committee. She has been involved in fundraising for various organisations and been a member of primary and secondary school committees. Mr. John Ward of Palmerston North. Mr. Ward has provided voluntary service to the community for over 50 years. He operates a classical radio music station at no cost to either his listeners or local ratepayers. He's been recording and archiving the choral and musical heritage of the Manawatu for many years and has supported the developing musical careers of a number of young musicians. He's been a playing member and tutor in the Palmerston North Garrison Band, the Palmerston North Brass Band and the Ohakia Air Force Band. Mrs. Kyung Suk Wilson of North Shore City. Mrs. Wilson has made an important contribution to the Korean community for over 20 years. She has used her abilities as an interpreter and translator for the benefit of the Korean and New Zealand communities, working with Middlemore Hospital, the Ministry of Education, the courts, police, doctors, schools and businesses. She worked as translator and mediator with Korean seamen in Wellington in the 1980s when there was no official translator available.
Your Excellency, to receive the Queen's Service Medal for Public Services, Mr. Herbert Harrison of Timaru. Mr. Harrison spent much of his working life teaching metalwork, woodwork and technical drawing. He was principal of South Canterbury Community College and the foundation principal of Aoraki Polytechnic. He performed as a tenor soloist and choirmaster in several Christchurch choirs and served as soloist with the New Zealand Symphony Orchestra in live concerts and radio broadcasts. He was for various periods conductor and musical director of South Canterbury choirs and has an ongoing involvement in church music. Mr. Harrison has also been involved in a number of pastoral care projects under the auspices of the Bishop of Christchurch. Mr. Bob Langham of Auckland. Mr. Langham joined the Parks Department in Auckland in 1962 and taught himself the art of bonsai. He became New Zealand's leading authority on the subject and in 1967 formed the first bonsai club in New Zealand. He attended several courses in Japan and was recently presented with the award of Grandmaster by the Japanese Consul General, recognizing his skills at bonsai and his contribution to the friendship between New Zealand and Japan. He makes his garden available for charity events and gives talks and demonstrations on bonsai to local clubs. Mrs. Margaret Peace of Blenheim. Mrs. Peace has been active in conservation for over 40 years. She was a founding member of the Marlborough Environment Centre, a member of the Wairau Lagoon Protection Society, and a founding member of the Agricultural Chemicals Action Group. She served on the Marlborough Catchment and Regional Water Boards for 3 years and was a member of the Marlborough Sounds Maritime Park Board. She has been an advocate for the protection of New Zealand's native forests through the Native Forest Action Council, and for the last 20 years through the Royal Forest and Bird Protection Society. She has championed organic farming and has hosted thousands of young people on her organic farm. Mr. Tosh Rufew of Kaiapoi. Mr. Rufew has been a teacher of Tirau at the St. Albans Primary School for 14 years. The school's bilingual unit is highly regarded in Canterbury, and much credit is given to Mr. Rufew for his part in establishing this reputation. He has been recognised with a Community Service Award for his outstanding service to the school community and speaks regularly on national Māori radio programs. He has also taught Te Reo at Burnside High School and Avonside Girls High School. Mr. Robert Twaddle of Napier. Mr. Twaddle is the founding principal of Taradale High School and has a long record of community service in the Taradale area. He was a foundation member and president of the Local Development Association for 11 years and a committee member of the High School and School Foundation. He is also a past president of the Rotary Club. He played a key role in the committee formed to relocate and refurbish the community library, and was the driving force behind a local campaign to retain the Community Policing Centre. Mr. Twaddle has also been active in Scouting, the Probers Club, and on the Taradale Centenary Committee. Mr. William Wiki of Manukau City. Mr. Wiki has had a long involvement in the Otara community. His activities include the coordination of the Otara Diabetes Support Group, trustee of the Otara Community Law Office, and a member of the Kaitiaki Group for Otara Opportunities for Jobs. He is co-matua at the Manukau Police District, the Otara Family and Christian Health Centre, and Tangaroa College. He was chairman of the Otara Union Health Centre Policy Board for several years and a member of the county's Manukau Police District Maori Advisory Group. Mr. Wiki was recently elected president of the Northern Chemical Workers Union. Your Excellency, the investiture is now concluded.
Those whom we have honoured today and our distinguished guests, family and friends. Twice a year, I have the great honour of meeting a small number of people from all parts of New Zealand who have come to Government House for their investiture. While my duties as Governor-General encompass a wide range of activities, for me, these ceremonies are among the most important events of the year. In a world where success is often measured in material terms, it's important to recognise and to celebrate achievements that have benefited the community or have given us a sense of pride in being New Zealanders. This occasion, when we have a public opportunity to show our admiration and our gratitude to those who have done so much for our country, is therefore of great importance. I am particularly pleased that we have among us people from all walks of life, from a wide age group and from a wide variety of occupations. Some of you may already have had recognition for your work, but for others this may be the first time. Among you are a courageous few who have received awards for gallantry or for bravery. For some, whether your award has been conferred for service or for courage, your acts have been performed in the line of duty. For others, you have acted out of compassion or from a strong desire to help other people. One thing that I can say is that for all of you, the honour you have received today is well deserved. You have been selected for what you have done, whether on the spur of the moment or during long months or years of work helping or guiding others. Our honours system reflects genuinely New Zealand values, and it's based on merit and merit alone. Our honours recognise achievement on behalf of and for all New Zealanders. They recognise community involvement, sporting success, selfless dedication, bravery, contributions to the arts, ingenuity, intelligence and talent. This gathering makes this a special occasion for me, for you, the recipients of these New Zealand honours, and for the whole of New Zealand. For this is a day when we as a nation can say thank you for everything that you have done, and we can celebrate the achievements of all of you. You display the very best of our national character, and I know that your work and your example inspires other New Zealanders to work creatively, tirelessly and selflessly, as each of you have done. Many of you have done so in a way that humbles me and all who have heard of your endeavours. It's been a great privilege for me to confer these honours on you today. On behalf of all New Zealanders, may I congratulate you again for what you have achieved and thank you for what you have done for your fellow citizens.